Living in Virginia, you're in the fast lane on the information superhighway. We've invested $3 billion in Virginia's broadband network to give you one of the fastest internet connection speeds in the world, so you can build relationships, bring new business to our state, and meet the future of education. It's amazing what we can do together. Visit VCTA.com to learn how broadband connects the Commonwealth.
From the General Assembly and the City of Richmond, I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast, connecting Virginians to their government. We're pleased to connect you with three members of the General Assembly. Senator Rosalind Dance, good to see you.
Good morning.
Delegate Jeffrey Bourne, good to see you.
Good morning.
Delegate Lamont Bagby, good to see you, sir.
Good to see you.
Senator Dance, 3.5 days into the session, how are things going?
Great. We're off to a quick start. We actually conducted business even on the first day of session. Because if there are bills that have been carried over from the year before, we can quickly make a quick vote and dispatch with them. And one of those awesome bills that have been really not just 1 year, but probably about 8 years or so, has been the ratifying, the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment Bill. And it was first up on Privileges and Elections, where a committee that I serve on, and it was a first day recognizing 400 years of Virginia as a democratic body, and the women came 400 strong to express their pleasure if the committee so deemed to have that particular bill forwarded to the floor. Goes to the floor probably this week or next. But the main issue is that it's a bipartisan bill, and actually Senator Glenn Sturtevant is first on the bill. I'm second, along with a huge group of senators that believe that this is the time for Virginia to become the 38th state that ratifies Equal Rights Amendment and tells Congress, now get to work. Some say maybe it's just symbolic. We say it's the right thing to do, that men acknowledge that women are equal. Maybe a little bit more than equal, but let's just acknowledge it, take it off the table. First round up, we completed that. It's out of the committee and has been reported to the floor of the Senate for action.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I assume it will pass the Senate, then it will go to privileges and elections in the House, where it didn't fare so well last session, as I recall.
Well, you know what? I'm sitting here with two awesome men, and it only takes a few good men to make the difference, because ultimately women got the right to vote because the men said so, because we didn't have that right. We got that. It's going to take some men to take it over the bridge. And so I'm sitting beside two, and I know they're up to the challenge.
I'm up to the challenge.
Great.
I'm a proud co-sponsor of the House version of the bill.
Great. Well, let's talk about it a little bit, because it will go before privileges and elections.
So
that was a partisan vote last year.
Yes. Well, I don't even think it got a hearing last year. No. And so that's one of the frustrating things is, like, we come down here to vote, and so let's put each bill up and let them rise or fall on their own merits. I think this is an issue that, there's a lot of political hay that's made about it. Why would we need it in our U.S. Constitution? Well, an interesting fact is it's already in the Virginia Constitution, so I don't know what the big deal is about not hearing it, about not passing it, and enshrining in our Constitution the fundamental belief that men and women are created equal, and everybody, regardless of your gender, your race, your color, your creed, needs to be treated fairly under the law. And so I look forward and hope and pray that we get an opportunity on the House floor to vote, because I can't wait to push the green light.
And I think you're also pursuing some more legislation in terms of decriminalizing acts of disruption that happen in our schools.
I am, and so last year we were able to shorten the time period by which school divisions can long-term suspended students. And so this year we're taking another bite at the apple and trying to really further disrupt the school-to-prison pipeline. And the bill that I'm very passionate about is prohibiting law enforcement from charging criminally students with disorderly conduct. That's when they're at school, when they're at a school activity, when they're on school grounds. We have gone way too far and criminalized too much behavior that should be corrected within the confines of a student code of conduct. You know, things that I did when I was in school that probably got me detention or in-school suspension or, you know, extra laps at practice. You know, are now being criminalized, and unfortunately, it is overwhelmingly disproportionately affecting children of color and students with disabilities. So, this is just another sort of bite at the apple of disrupting the school-to-prison pipeline.
Delegate Bagby, I know that as head of the Black Legislative Caucus, your group has an agenda.
Yes, sure, and it includes a number of the things, as these are two members of the caucus, and I'm so grateful for their vote to make me the chair. But those are two of the issues that we'll be working on and are on the Legislative Black Caucus agenda. Delegate Bourne mentioned the pre-K to prison pipeline and us disrupting and dismantling that. We're not only interested in lowering the number of suspensions, lowering the number of expulsions and the days, and lowering the number of students being charged in school. As a former teacher and school board member, what we're also interested in is providing the support to the teachers and the school administrators. We understand what they're saying to us as it relates to there are discipline issues in the school, there are behavior issues in the school, there are mental health issues in the schools. We want to make sure we also provide those resources. And so what you'll see from the governor's budget, as well as amendments from our caucus members, is resources putting back into the school, whether it's school counselors. Delegate Bourne served on the committee over the summer that really worked on school discipline and how we have so many shootings in our schools and what's the sort of reasoning behind that. And so school counselors is a main thing, making sure we have a good ratio. And I think, Senator, you have a bill for that. And
I will be carrying that bill on behalf of the governor, and it's, as you said, he has actually put in the funding for this, and it's really not what you would call an end-all. What he's doing is allowing those school systems that want to pursue this. The ratio, I'm carrying the bill that would change the ratio from 1 to 500 to 1 to 250, which is not an ideal number, but it is cutting it in half as far as the need to have more school counselors in the schools. Because there's always a root cause, as Delegate Bagby was saying, to why we do things. And we realize the behaviors and things that are exhibited by the children are because of their problems that they're encountering. So I had an opportunity to serve this summer on Chesterfield's School Safety Task Force, which addressed those issues. And one unique thing was we had one student. She was a Euro-American, but she really spoke for all the students, and she discussed her concerns about the number of students, of African-American students that seem to have always been the ones that were caught doing something, but not necessarily the ones that were doing it. But then again, she talked about mental health issues that might cause this and their need for that support. So that was one of the recommendations that came from that. But then the governor had his safety task force as well as the Speaker of the House, and so they all seemed to come to the same point that there is a need. But I was really impressed with that student identifying that there is a need to address that healthcare issue. So this is one of the ways that we will be hopefully getting support from our colleagues to allow schools the opportunity. It's a 3-year funding stream that says that for those schools who want to transition, but ultimately you're going to have to accept that this is something that you want to have in your system, that you want to continue through. But this is like the funds that start the process, because there are some schools that are already below 250, because that is where it should be. But it allows the school systems to enter into it. Those funds, if they want to participate, that they can. But this is something that has been identified. It is that in order to change what we are seeing is that we have to deal with the root cause. And the early age that we do this, the better. That we can see a problem, identify it, and work towards correction. We won't have students in the high schools or whatever doing the things that get them sent from school to prison.
So there are a host of issues, particularly in the education realm, that we're focused on as the Black Caucus, and we're so proud that we meet with the governor regularly, and he decided to put so many of those into his budget, including increasing the compensation for teachers, and including the number of dollars that are put into at-risk add-on. And so I know that the senator also serves on finance, and I also know that Delegate Bourne has been working with the city of Richmond to make sure that we address the concerns in a fashion that not only we see fit, but the main thing is once those dollars get down to the local level, how they will use them.
Delegate Bourne, talk to us a little bit more about those needs. Our children are confronted with things that you and I were never confronted with.
Sure.
And as you indicated, the things I got in trouble for, the things you got in trouble for, we didn't get sent to juvenile court.
Right.
So there's a huge difference here. Teacher compensation needs to be improved, but that ratio that the senator talked about is really significant.
It is, because when you talk about school safety, and whether it be the governor's commission, the speakers, or Chesterfield counties, I think one of the things that gives me hope is that there really was, at the end of the day, a more holistic approach. Most of the time when you talk about school safety, it's security guards and police officers and bulletproof windows and cameras and all, but really what we need to focus on is the whole issue. And so when you think about putting more resources in our counseling operations, and reducing their caseload, reducing and increasing the amount of time that they're actually focusing on doing counseling, because what happens is that school systems become strapped, the resources decline, and now you have student counselors proctoring tests, being SOL coordinators, greeting parents, doing things that they're just not, we didn't hire them to do. And so when you can get them back doing what they're trained to do and what we've hired them to do, which is help the kids, I think you'll make a huge impact on student safety day in and day out. I think what's more is we're putting more focus and more resources, more meat behind the words. We've got to train our teachers on trauma-informed care, because many of our students come to school with much more than books in their backpack. They have a lot of trauma, a lot of baggage that they're bringing, and so we've got to help them deal with that, help the families, so that every student can be successful. And so, that's what we're going to focus on, because we know it works. It's not rocket science, and focusing on the children and our teachers and our administrators in our school buildings first is going to yield the type of benefits that we want.
Senator, what about public health, safety, and who pays for it in terms of the coal ash issue in your district?
Oh, that's a good one. Actually, I'm going to be number 2 on a bill with Senator Scott Servo and Senator Amanda Chase of Senator Scott Servo is in Northern Virginia, and Senator Chase is in Chesterfield with me. But I have 2 of those coal ash ponds that we've been talking about over the last 3 sessions, and Senator Servo has pretty much led the charge with the legislation that has gone forward. I've had a chance to, of course, talk with him along the way because of the impact to my part of the district that has that problem. And this year I am on it because we now we are both sharing the governor's bill, and as well as Senator Chase as well. The 3 of us will be co-chief patroning a bill that will address how do we do this. For me, it's always been safety first. First, do no harm to the citizens. Show me that your plan will not hurt them. Number 2, show me that your plan will not gorge them, that it's a cash cow that requires them to have higher rates for their utility services that they must have than they need to. So that's what I've been looking for. What is the best option for us? The governor has weighed in on the legislation that we're having, but ultimately it is my hope that at the end of the day we will have a bill that addresses the industry's need to do business, as well as the environmental protections part to make sure that it is a safe way to do it. And then the weigh in from the State Corporation Commission as far as the rates to make sure that the utility rates are fair and equitable based on what needs to be done to protect the people of the Commonwealth. So it's going to be a journey, and I always say it starts out, it might start out to be a dog or a cat, but at the end of the day, I would love for it to be a catfish with green eyes that is edible. So we'll work towards that.
Yes, there's always a balance there that has to be drawn, the needs of the industry versus public health, safety, and finances, especially as that relates to ratepayers, your constituents.
Sure. Is that a question?
Yes, that's the question.
What's the question?
I'm sorry, the question is, how do you maintain that balance?
Well, I think the primary goal is to make sure that the safety is, particularly in our waterways and air, is safe. And so I think we're willing to pay the cost on whatever that is. We need to make sure that we address that. And so right now, I think we are all in agreement of the model that we should move forward with this and any other type of coal ponds that are in the future. I think this helps set up the future because we haven't been in a space like this before. So this is new to us as a legislature and as a community as a large. And I think the community has spoken, and they say do not cap in place, and that's not something that I think we intend to do.
Turning fundamentally to the budget, there is a real first step, so to speak, before there's any money spent, and that has to do with whether the state of Virginia will conform to the new federal tax code. How do you see that playing out?
Well, I hope it plays out really close to what the governor has sort of laid out in his budget, and really focusing on conforming, and then also making sure that the earned income tax credits are in place and increased for those individuals that need it the most. What's happening on the federal level is good in some places, but it's awful for those individuals that need it the most. And so those individuals that are making the least are the ones that are hurt the most. And so we want to make sure that we do as much as we can as a Commonwealth. And I think the governor has taken a good bite at the apple, first bite at the apple at that. And so I hope that we will support his budget and his actions towards the tax plan, and make some minor adjustments. But I think he would agree with the adjustments that we intend to make.
And I think, Delegate Bourne, that your colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to see more money go to other places. For example, I don't think it appears that they are interested in making the earned income tax credit fully refundable.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's right. I think, I always try to look for the positive in every situation. And so we've got 2, 3, 4 plans out there. The governor has his. My friends on the other side have certainly put forward what they believe are the best ideas. I tend to agree with the chair, and I think, making sure that our tax system reflects the idea that those who need it the most, those who make the least, need to be able to have more disposable income in their pockets. And so making the EITC fully refundable, making sure that we're targeting our tax relief to middle class Virginians. And I've seen some numbers, family of $150,000 being quote unquote middle class. Well, I can tell you there are not many middle class folks that I know that earn that kind of money. And so I think, regardless of how it all shapes out, and I know Senator Dance is on the Senate Finance, so she'll have a huge voice in this. But I think, some fundamental principles of making sure that we are truly protecting the least among us. 2, that we make significant investments in our priorities, so education, infrastructure, public safety. And then one of the things that makes Virginia a great place is our fiscal responsibility. And so making sure that we put some money away and save it. And so those 3 principles, I think, will guide at least my thoughts and opinions and decisions on this. And I think they're consistent with us as a Black Caucus, us as legislators, just generally.
And Senator Dance, I'm sure you're
I
committee.
agree with Senator Bourne 100%. But I'm listening to what Delegate Bagby has to say as well. But I will tell you that one of the key things that the governor said that was a takeaway for me when he had his speech to the his Commonwealth address to the Commonwealth, and it is that he said, "I've offered up my best, on this, but I am open to what, and that is the other side of the aisle has to say," because he too is one that believes, and he's identified those things that he wants to see, that everybody in Virginia rise, not just some, but we all have an opportunity to rise and have a quality of life here second to none, because Virginia is number one as we see it. And in that vein, that there would be some compromising, and it's not going to he didn't say, here's a script and take it and go with it. He says, I am open to some compromise. I'm open to hear what you say, because ultimately, if we have the same goal of making sure that at the end of the day that everybody rises, well, let's see what you have on the table. So he has left that door open to see what the other side of the aisle might have and are willing to present that will give us the desired outcome for Virginia, for all Virginians. And so I'm looking forward for this session, which is going to be quick and fast-paced, and it'll probably be in our face quicker than we want it to be. But those are some issues, some really solid issues that we're going to have to address before we leave here in probably now 39 days.
39 days. And Delegate Bagby, another issue that's confronting the General Assembly has to do with redistricting. Yes. We've got some cases in court. We have a recent Supreme Court refusal to enter a stay regarding a map that is being redrawn. And we've got some pieces of legislation that would create a bipartisan commission to redraw lines ultimately. How do you think those things are going to play out over the next 46 days and over the next year, actually?
Well, we're anxious as we anticipate the actions of the court as it relates to the special master's map. What we've seen from it so far is moving in the right direction. Hopefully by 2021, as a result of legislation that could possibly be passed this session, we will have an independent commission. But we want to also make sure that the voices of African Americans will continue to be heard. I've told someone before, this is the first year, and you've been here quite some time, but this is the first year in the history of Virginia that African Americans will have a significant voice in redistricting in 2021. And it just so happens most of us are Democrats, and we will likely have the majority prayerfully. Even if we don't have the majority, we have a good friend in Ralph Northam in the executive mansion. And so this is the first year. You look back to 2011, 2001, all those years, we really haven't had a real significant opportunity to make an impact on the budget. On the redistricting. This is the first year. And so what we want to make sure we do is, as we get our first real bite at the apple, that we're not giving it all up. And we're not seeing a number of individuals like we see so many times with committees and commissions made up of all white males. We want to make sure that that committee or commission, whatever it is, looks like Virginia. And so that's one of the main things that we are concerned with and want to make sure that happens. I support an independent commission, but we want to make sure that that commission reflects what the Commonwealth looks like.
And Delegate Bourne, how important is an independent commission, and what's going on in the courts important to you and your constituents?
Well, first and foremost, the district I represent is one of the 11 that's the subject of the underlying case, and so I like my colleagues, support an independent commission to do redistricting because I think at the end of the day, the voters should choose their representatives, not the other way around. And so as we wait for the court to make its final determination, my hope is that we continue to move forward on legislation like this to really try and get as much of the politics and the political posturing out of redistricting. Now you're going to have obviously some politics because somebody's got to appoint the commission members. And so how do you get there? What are the criteria that we look at? How do we select the commission members? How do we draw our maps? All those sorts of things are going to have an undertone of politics. It's just the nature of what we do. But I think the ultimate commission can be independent. It can be bipartisan, nonpartisan, and can have folks that really understand how to draw lines, make sure that we're engaging the right professionals to help us with the maps and the technology. But at the end of the day, the commissions, the people who draw the maps ought to reflect the people that each and every one of the 140 members of the Virginia General Assembly represent. And so that's paramount as we continue along this path.
And Senator Dance, there are other voting rights issues that you've been working on
Yeah.
for a long time, especially absentee voting.
Yes, but I want to say in regards to the redistricting as privileges in elections, and I'm back on that committee again, is where I sat when the privileges in this redistricting was drawn, and that has now been declared, that it was not done correctly, that it was gerrymandering. And actually, Senator Jennifer McClellan and I of Richmond, we both had the responsibility of testifying twice. The last time, of course, we won that round. But going forward, one of the basic things we say is that it doesn't matter who's redistricting, is that people need to vote. And I carry again, as I have been carrying for several years now, that we should be able to go, if we want to vote early because we know we can't vote on election day, we shouldn't have to go through a whole list of, we got to check this box and that box to verify that we qualify. We should be able to go to the registrar's office, fill out our information, present our information, vote, and go on about our business, because it's all about having the right to vote. And I want to make it as easy as possible to do it. So again, I have my no excuse. The excuses can be, I'm not trying to change the statute, but no excuse. All I have to do is come in, present my information, vote. And that's what people should be able to do, vote and go on about their business. But this is an important part of Virginia's business that they might miss out on because they work, or there are complications that prevent them from being there on that one day of the year, the second Tuesday in November. So for that, again, I carry no excuse voting.
What about voting for felons who have served their time and they've been released? There's been a big controversy about that for years here as well.
Yes, and I think as a Black Caucus, we're in a position to support every member of our community is able to vote. And so instead of taking away those rights initially, those individuals should be able to keep those rights from the beginning. And so I think we're in a position to support all individuals maintaining their right to vote.
And of course, a lot of these measures require constitutional amendments. That requires what introduction of the resolution, then another election, and then a reintroduction and a vote again. So that's a pretty onerous process.
It is, and as frustrating as it may be for those of us who like to see change happen at a much more rapid pace, I do think it probably strikes the right balance, because anytime you amend a constitution, which is your most fundamental document of your beliefs and your governing structure, and the list goes on, you ought to do that carefully, and you ought not rush and do that. So I think it provides the right check and balance, but certainly we want to see it happen as quickly as possible. So my hope is that we see some of these things pass this year. We can vote and come back, and we'll certainly pass them again next year.
Well, thank you for all being here, Delegate Lamont
Yeah.
Bagby,
Thank you for having us.
Senator Rosalind Dance, and Delegate Jeffrey Bourne. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Comcast. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.
Mm-hmm.